Indiana fans need to understand it's okay if Mike Woodson gets fired after this year.
You are Locked On Hoosiers, your daily podcast on the Indiana Hoosiers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome in. It is the Locked On Hoosiers podcast. I'm your man, Jacob Goins. I appreciate you making this your first listen each and every day. We are part of the Locked On Podcast Network, which is your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDON for $20 off your first ticket purchase. Well, I appreciate you being here. Shout out to the everydayers. If you're on YouTube, like the video, subscribe to the channel. Both of those things are free. It takes one tap, helps us grow in a big, big way. So thank you so much for doing that. If you're on the audio platforms, reminder, we are free and available wherever you get your podcast. Indiana fans have to understand it's okay if Mike Woodson gets fired after just 3 seasons. I'm going to tell you why. We'll also look at the Big Ten standings, kind of look at the tournament if it were to start today, where the Hoosiers lie, and then we'll talk a little bit about the women's team as well, as they are on the road at Wisconsin tonight. There's been so much conversation lately and so much talk, especially on our show, with you, the fans, you, the listeners, on the boards, wherever you go, right? There's been a lot of conversation about the future of Mike Woodson at Indiana, and rightfully so. His overall record this season, not great. His overall record in under 3 years of play at Indiana as a head coach is not great either, 58-36. And 2 of those years, he had some really good teams and really good players that I think probably elevated that and made that possible. And a very common theme that I'm seeing from Indiana fans and hearing from other Indiana fans is you've got to give him time. You have to let him build the program, bring in or build a culture, create a culture, bring in players, yada, 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 right? And a lot of people have said 3 years is not long enough. 3 years is not enough time for a coach to be successful in college basketball. While I agree with that sometimes, the problem with this is it's been a bumpy 3 years. And yes, I know there's NCAA tournament appearances in there, but I can't stress enough how much I think some really key players, especially last year, covered up some significant problems on this team and on this staff and within this program. And you're seeing that this year when those players are gone. Yes, you lost 2 guys to the NBA. That's a tough thing to replace. I get that. But Indiana didn't bring in a bunch of bums. We didn't bring in guys off the practice squad to try and run out on the floor in Big Ten play. We brought in 5 stars. We brought in big-time transfer portal guys, and we still have long-term seniors on this team. And so after year 3, in a year when this wraps up, that we're probably not going to make the NCAA tournament, we'll go and play in the NIT, whoop-de-doo. I think Indiana fans, I think we need to understand here that it's acceptable for Mike Woodson to be let go after 3 years. I'm not saying they do it. I'm not saying that it happens, and I'm not necessarily saying that I think it should happen. But I think if it does, I think we should all be able to understand why. And I think that we should accept that that's kind of where college basketball and really college athletics are nowadays. And whether you like it or not, that's up to you. I don't like it, really. I really don't. But think about the society we live in. It's a win now society, want it now society, and college sports have become that to the highest degree. And a lot of that has to do with NIL and transfer portal and get good now, win now type of thing. And Indiana's not doing that. And for me personally, I get upset when I don't see any changes, when I don't see any game plan changes. I don't see any roster movement. I don't see any lineup changes or game planning or anything different than what's been happening all season long. And yeah, I'll just tell you straight up, my confidence in Mike Woodson for the future is very low right now because he hasn't given me anything to work with. And what happens if Indiana Athletics is thinking the same thing. What happens if our athletic department is looking at it and thinking the exact same thing? Because this is the most important sport, basketball, in this state, at this school. And it's just not where it needs to be right now. Look at the women's side. They're doing great. Top 15 team in the country. They're going to be a top 4 seed in the NCAA tournament. They're doing great things. Nothing's happening on the men's side. And that's not okay. I've talked about how it's unacceptable to have losing seasons against Purdue and possibly have a losing season altogether. That has to change. And so what has to change? Maybe it is Mike Woodson. Maybe it's some of the other assistants on the staff. I don't know. But this whole narrative of he needs 5, 6, 7 years to build a program, I think that's an older way of thinking, unfortunately. And again, I don't necessarily agree with that it's an older way of thinking and that you have 3 or 4 years and then you're out. But that just seems to be where the sport is trending. That seems to be where the world is going. And so I say all of that to say this. I don't know if Woodson's going to be fired or not. My gut feeling is that he's not. My gut feeling is that he stays for another year because of who he is and the money that we owe him and all of that. But if he is let go, if he is fired after the 3rd year, don't be surprised. Don't be shocked. And don't be shocked if you see this in other programs around the country too, whether it be in the Big Ten, whether it be Power 6 basketball, or just in general. Don't be surprised if that's a growing trend over the next few years to can a coach that's not winning and winning right now, because some are winning right now and making an instant impact and bringing teams back from the dead. I've seen a lot of you talk about it in our YouTube comments, other coaches at other programs. And that's a conversation for a different time, but other coaches are doing it at other places and it's just not happening here. So I think we have to accept that it's a real possibility that he does not return. Mike Woodson does. I think that's a real possibility. And I'm telling you not to be shocked if it happens. I don't think it does. In my opinion, I don't think it does. But I'm telling you, if it does, don't be shocked, because that's where we're trending in the sport of college basketball. Coming up on Locked On Hoosiers, we'll take a look at the Big Ten standings on the men's side. If the tournament started today, the Big Ten tournament, that is, where would Indiana be? What do they have to do to improve on that? And how can they go on a run? We're going to talk about all of that coming up in just a second on Locked On Hoosiers. Today's episode of Locked On Hoosiers is brought to you by Game Time. Game Time is the fast and easy way to buy tickets for all the sports, music, comedy, and theater events near you. And right now, all users get $100 off when they buy a big game ticket in Vegas. With killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, views from your seat, and their best price guarantee, Game Time takes the guesswork out of buying tickets. Look, some of my favorite parts about the Game Time app, I've used it numerous times for numerous different things, comedy shows, sporting events. I have family members that have used it for theater events, and everybody has loved it. Last-minute tickets, flash deals, zone deals, views from all seats in the venue, and their lowest price guarantee, and event cancellation protection. Game Time is obsessed with finding ways to help you save money on tickets. Game Time has deals on tickets right up to the start of the event, and even an hour after it starts. It's the place to find last-minute seats. With zone deals, you pick the section, and Game Time picks the seats for big-time savings. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app and use code LOCKEDON for $20 off your first purchase. That's download the Game Time app and use code LOCKEDON for $20 off your first purchase. Download Game Time today. Last-minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. Welcome back into Locked On Hoosiers. I appreciate you being here, making this your go-to spot for all things Indiana athletics. Reminder, we are free and available wherever you get your podcast. Let's take a look at the Big Ten standings when it comes to men's college basketball, because we are coming down the home stretch. We're coming down with the last 6 or 7 games here, and if you start looking at, well, what happens if the tournament started today? And where are the current standings? Where does Indiana lie? And what do they have to do to try and improve on their current Big Ten standings? And the reason we talk about this is because this is very important for Indiana. The Hoosiers not only got to get some big wins in regular season play in these last couple of chances, Northwestern, Wisconsin, Michigan State, but then you still have to go on a run in the Big Ten tournament. You're going to have to. I don't think there's any doubting that when it comes to Indiana's postseason hopes. And as of right now, Indiana sitting at 6-7 in Big Ten play. You are 9th in the conference. That's not good. That's not good at all. You're near the bottom. And not only are you not getting in that top 4 for the double bye, you're not even getting close. I mean, you're playing on that very second day. You're playing in those opening games of the Big Ten tournament, which means you have to go on a legitimate run to make it to the NCAA tournament, to make some noise and splash in the water a little bit. You don't have the benefit as of right now. Could it change? Maybe. I mean, everybody's within 2 or 3 games, which is nice. But reason I say that is Indiana, if you don't get up top, you don't have that benefit of starting later into the Big Ten tournament. You don't have the benefit of starting in the quarters and only having to win 2 or 3 or 4 games if you want to make some noise and try to pick up some wins and go on that run. Now, Indiana's got to start basically at the beginning. It's like starting in the back of the race and having to catch up to everybody else. And as of right now, that's where Indiana is at the 9th spot, sitting at 6-7. But you look at where everybody else sits right now. You look at where everybody else is, and it's tight, man. This Big Ten race is in this conference is really, really tight all the way through. And while the Big Ten this season may not be what it has been in the past, I still think it's a good conference. I do. I still think it's a good conference. They've just started eating each other alive because you look top to bottom, Purdue at the top at 11-2. They're probably going to win the conference. Illinois 9-4, Wisconsin 9-5. This is where it starts to get interesting. Northwestern 8-5. They're the 4th spot. Michigan State 7-6. Minnesota 6-6, Nebraska 7-7, Penn State 6-7, Indiana 6-7, and Iowa 6-7. And folks, you start looking around, Indiana's only 2 games back of the top 4 spots. 2 games back. And guess what? They play Northwestern. They play Michigan State. They play Minnesota. They play all of these teams ahead of them, which is what makes these so crucial. Imagine, just think about it. If we could get to the top 4 of the Big Ten tournament, that gives us such a better chance to make some noise and do something about it and do something with the end of our season. But you've got to win these games coming down the stretch. And I say that, again, you play Northwestern this weekend. You play Nebraska. They're ahead of you. You play Penn State. They're ahead of you. You play Minnesota and Michigan State and Wisconsin. They are ahead of you. You see what I'm saying here? The Hoosiers have everything in front of them. We have everything to play for here. Just got to win some games. Got to win some games and turn it around. Because all of a sudden, you start picking up quad 1 wins like Northwestern and Wisconsin and Michigan State, then you're in business. Then you're talking. Then you start winning a couple of games in the Big Ten tournament. Then everybody is like, whoa, hold up. Indiana's hot. Indiana's a hot team right now. And we know how it goes with the NCAA tournament. Sometimes they put those teams in and sometimes they don't. Sometimes they look back at those big non-conference wins in November, December, and sometimes they take that team that's just been on a scorcher over the last few weeks. We hope, that's us, right? We hope Indiana gets to that point and becomes one of those scorching hot teams. And then we also hope that the NCAA tournament sees that and sees the fact that this is a good team with a lot of talent. And if they're playing well, would be a good addition to the NCAA tournament because the parity this year around the sport is unbelievable. I mean, college basketball is broken this year. I've told you that. Indiana's got to prove that they belong. Indiana has to prove that they should be in those top 68 teams. And right now, I don't know if they've been able to prove that yet. I don't think they have. And you start looking at things like the net rankings, which is what they are going to look at. And Indiana's not impressive at all. Indiana's not sexy at all when it comes to the net or KenPom or whatever you want to look at. I mean, you start scrolling and looking down, and it takes you a while to find Indiana. And so wins over big-time teams like Wisconsin, like Michigan State, like those teams ahead of you, all of those things add up. They stack up and build your resume, the resume that Indiana just doesn't have right now. They don't have one. And the one that they do is bad. It's really bad. It's really bad, which is why you have to start taking care of business. And which is why, again, I've been saying when it comes to Mike Woodson, if you don't start winning these games, he should expect to be fired. He should expect his job to at least be up for grabs and at risk, because good coaches would win these games. Good coaches would figure out a way to rally their team, rally the troops, if you will, and get their team ready to go and play and tell them, look, your season's on the line right now. It's up for grabs. Your season is at stake every single time we walk out on the floor. First and second half, Woody, not just the first half. Your season is in your hands. Can the Hoosiers do anything about it? That's the big question, and we're going to find out. I think a lot of us would say no as of right now. Maybe they can turn it around. Maybe they can prove us wrong. Prove somebody like me wrong who has tried to have so much positivity about this team and just gets burned every time for trying to do it. Maybe they found it. Maybe they figured it out. Because Indiana right now in the net, they sit at 100. 100 in the net. And that is at a 14-10 record, with quad one being 1-8. So you do at least have one quad one win. Thankfully, one of those became a quad one win, but you've got 8 losses in that category. You also have a quad 3 loss. Ouch. That doesn't help. So I think you got to get another quad 1 win just to wipe that away. We got work to do, folks. Got work to do, but Indiana's still alive in the Big Ten race, not to win it, but to make it into the top 4 of the Big Ten tournament. Well, coming up in the final segment of Locked On Hoosiers, the Lady Hoosiers are in action tonight. They'll be in Madison taking on the Badgers of Wisconsin. We'll take a look at that, take a look at where the women are in the newest AP poll, latest bracketology as well. All that coming up in the final segment here on Locked On Hoosiers. Today's episode of Locked On Hoosiers is brought to you by FanDuel. Get buckets with your first bet on FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. Because right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. Place a $5 bet on any college game. You got a bunch of Big Ten games going on tonight and all week. Of course, Indiana, the men, playing Northwestern this weekend. If you feel confident about it, throw a little $5 on there from FanDuel, and if they win, you'll get $150. That's $150 if your bet wins. Bet on all your favorite NBA players and teams with quick bets, live same-game parlays, exclusive props, and more. Just visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn and shoot your shot. FanDuel, official sportsbook partner of the NBA. Final segment here on Locked On Hoosiers. I appreciate you being here. Shout out to the everydayers. You're the reason that we have this, and you're the reason that this is all possible. As we look at the Indiana women as they are in action tonight in the college game, Indiana Lady Hoosiers, number 14 team in the country, hanging around right there in the newest AP poll, still a top 15 team, still doing their thing, coming off a big win over Purdue this weekend. And they're on the road at Wisconsin, a team that's 11-11, 4-8 overall in conference play. Nothing super crazy, right? Nothing that anybody should really sweat about. Wisconsin coming off a loss to Northwestern. Hoosiers coming off the big win over Purdue. And this doesn't really come down to Wisconsin's a threat to beat you. It's a midweek road game in the Big Ten. And is this going to be a place that Indiana's going to be in a hostile crowd and environment? No, I don't think so. Nothing crazy, but people come up, people show up and show out when Indiana comes to town, especially this ladies team who they're playing really, really well right now. And some of the stats between these two teams are just, they're just astronomically different. Wisconsin averaging 63 points a game. Indiana, almost 82 points a game. So I got a good feeling that Indiana's going to be able to have their way to try to get in here and get themselves another win. And again, Wisconsin, just nothing to really be overly concerned about. And they've got a couple of wins this year, but again, they are coming off of that loss to Northwestern. They've got a win over Penn State. It's just not anything super crazy. And Wisconsin, they're just nothing really special to worry about, I don't think, for Indiana. If the Hoosiers go in and play their game, we're fine. We're going to be just fine. Indiana can win this game by double digits and not too worried about it. And you look at the last set of games for us, you had that win over Maryland. You did lose that game on the road at Ohio State, who, again, has just become one of the best teams in college basketball that I don't think a lot of people expected. Yes, they're good. They were good at the end of last year, but nobody expected them to be this. And so shout out to the Lady Buckeyes. But wins over Michigan State and Purdue. Here's the remaining schedule. And we're farther into the women's game than we are the men's game. So remember that. At Wisconsin, at Illinois, number 4 Iowa, coming back here to Bloomington, at Northwestern, and then Maryland. So Indiana should only have really one game to stress about if they play their way and play their brand. And it's that game against Caitlin Clark in Iowa coming up in just a couple of weeks, at about a week's time on the 22nd. Everything else should be fine because you start looking at the standings in the Big Ten, and Indiana's right there. They are right there in this thing, are the Lady Hoosiers behind Ohio State and Iowa. Now, they only play the Buckeyes once, so they don't have a chance to even that out. And so Ohio State has the tiebreaker, but they do with Iowa, who, you remember, they put it on us last time at their place. They did. They put it on us last time. But Indiana has a chance to repay that favor. So here's what we need. We need to keep winning. We need to beat Iowa, and we need Ohio State to slip up somewhere because they have one more loss than everybody else, and really, or one less loss, excuse me. They're 12-1. We really needed them to slip up twice somewhere. And just don't know if it's going to happen. You pull up their schedule really quick. They do end the year at number 4 Iowa. So we're pulling for Iowa in that game, not against us, of course, but in that game, probably pulling for Iowa. And we need the Buckeyes to slip up against either Nebraska, Penn State, Maryland, or Michigan. May not happen. Either way, Indiana's going to be a top 3 seed in the Big Ten women's tournament. And quickly, we'll look at the latest women's bracketology because it's really interesting. The Big Ten has 8 teams in right now on the ladies' side, which is really, really impressive in my opinion. Indiana at a 4 seed. I think that's a little low in my opinion. I know they're 14th in the AP poll, which would kind of put them right around a 3 or 4 seed anyway, but I don't know. I just think that's low. I think this team is too good. I think Mackenzie Holmes is one of the best players in college basketball, and this team's playing extremely well. And their only recent loss was, again, to Ohio State, who has become one of the best teams in the country, who, by the way, is a 1 seed in the ladies' bracketology right now. So your only bad loss, you don't even have a bad loss. Your only losses were Iowa and Ohio State. And guess what? Iowa is hanging around in this thing too as a 2 seed. So if you're the Lady Hoosiers, you have nothing to be upset about. And if you keep doing your thing, maybe they make a run in the Big Ten tournament and can improve on that seed line, because I think they're better than a 4 seed. I really do. As of right now, that would put them up against Stony Brook. That would put them in the Stanford bracket with Texas. And then the 3 seed would be USC. So I don't hate that. That's a really good Stanford team. Don't get me wrong. But we're not in the South Carolina region, not in the Ohio State region, not in the Iowa region. As of yet, there's a lot to change here. But I just feel like we're better than a 4 seed. And I think we're going to improve on that. I think we beat Iowa coming up in a couple of weeks. I think Indiana wins out. And I think they do make a run in the tournament and improve on that 4 seed. But Hoosiers have Wisconsin tonight, so looking forward to that one on Valentine's Day. So maybe the Lady Hoosiers can get it done on the road and play spoiler on the Love Day in Madison. That's going to do it for today's episode of Locked On Hoosiers. I appreciate you being here. Thank you so much for making this your go-to spot and your first listen each and every day. More episodes throughout the week as we approach the weekend. We'll keep talking about the ladies team. We'll keep talking about the men's team and the uncomfortableness of that whole situation and what Indiana can do as we approach the game this weekend against Northwestern. All that and more to finish out the week here on Locked On Hoosiers. So until then, stay safe, and I'll talk to you later.